All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Can't hear you, Lang.
Another unclicked mute. Good evening. Let's start the February 18th, 2021 meeting of the Harbor Commission. And Ms. Rodriguez, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes, of course. Commissioner Kramer,
Present.
Commissioner McCray,
Present.
Commissioner Nelson,
Present.
Commissioner Sloan,
Here.
Commissioner Stanowik,
Here.
Commissioner Stedman,
Here.
and Chair Sly.
Here.
All right, everybody's here. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yeah, Chair Sly, we do have one change to the agenda. So we're going to move item number 8, which is the presentation on the bike share program. We're going to move that to right after the department updates. This will make it our first item of new business. We have some public works presenters, and this will make it so they don't have to wait around so long, and we can maybe get them out a little sooner.
Okay. That's a good idea. Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment for items that are not on the agenda tonight?
Chair Sly, we do have one person with their hand raised at the moment. I'm not clear if it's for general public comment or for a specific item, so I'm going to call on them. But I do
Okay.
want to let the public know that if they'd like to make a comment, they can use the raise and lower your hand icon on the control panel, and I will notify them when it's their turn to speak, and they'll have 2 minutes. Anna Marie Gott, you are the first. I'm going to unmute you, and you may begin.
Good evening, commissioners. I just wanted to call in and thank you for your decision in your last meeting to go ahead and write a letter to the city council regarding the appeal for the bicycle right-of-way project in the coastal zone that was heard by the city council on the 9th. I also did just want to, express my appreciation of the concerns that you outlined, which were in regards to your lack of knowledge about the project, the locations in the coastal zone, the issues that you raised with regards to speed and safety. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. And I will, as I said in a letter to you later today, that I am appealing that particular decision by the City Council to the Coastal Commission, and would love to have another letter from you in support of my appeal at the Coastal Commission regarding this particular project. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gott, and thank you for your citizens' participation. We will be talking about this issue in detail later on in the agenda. Thank you. And nothing on the consent calendar that I'm aware of, Mr. Wilshire?
Just the approval of the last meeting's minutes, the January 21st meeting minutes.
Oh, that is under that topic. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion or correction to the minutes? Hearing none, let's just do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions? So we have a unanimous approval. Thank you. Moving to the department updates. First, the director's report.
All right. Well, good evening, Chair Sly and commissioners. Angela, I just wanted to check in if there were any other general public comment. I know that you made a comment there, and I just wanted to see if there was any more.
There are no additional hands raised at this time.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so we've got a fairly busy meeting this month, so I'll get right into my department update. My bit should be pretty quick. So unless there's any pressing questions up front, I'll just get started. Hearing none. So first off, I wanted to give a quick kudos to Chris Bell. If you noticed, our presentation template has changed a little bit. So this was just such a good photo, and so we thought we'd make it our new waterfront template. Chris does some really good work with his drone and getting these kind of shots. So I thought it was a pretty neat photo.
Looks great.
Yeah. Next slide, Angela. All right, so as in all the past meetings, I'll give a quick update on COVID and the impacts to the waterfront. So this graph is from the Santa Barbara County Health website, which provides some really excellent informational tools on COVID. I really encourage anybody on the commission or listening to use this resource and go to this site if you need any additional information on COVID. So I put this graph up there just because it kind of shows what's been going on. So as you can see, there has been a kind of a downward trend and a decrease in cases within Santa Barbara County. And what this graph is showing, the blue line is the case count, kind of right back to when this all began. And so although cases are still relatively high, it is showing a pretty clear peak back in New Year's. So at our last meeting, we were kind of in the thick of it, but cases are still high, but we are kind of trending in the right direction. Next slide. So I wanted to put this one up there as well. And so this just shows the ICU availability within Santa Barbara County. The red line is kind of the state's 15% threshold. So as you can see with this metric as well, over December and January, we kind of dip below that threshold, but we're moving back up. Capacity in the ICUs is improving, and this really indicates that there is a little bit of relief within the local hospitals. So it's just kind of at a high level, but I thought it was some good information to pass along. Next slide. All right, so with respect to the waterfront department, there has been some significant changes since we last met in January. So the most notable change is that the governor has lifted his stay-at-home order and reverted back to the 4-tier system that we were in kind of prior to the holidays. So this change puts us back into the purple or widespread tier. And this does remove a number of restrictions on waterfront tenants that have been in place under that stay-at-home order. So some of the notable changes are our restaurant tenants can operate with outdoor dining again. Museums can operate outdoors. Boat charters can operate at 25% capacity, and wineries can operate outdoors. So this has definitely been a change. There's definitely been a bit of a shift and a change down at the waterfront. This last weekend was I'd consider it fairly busy. So restaurants are safely open for business and outdoor dining. And with the holiday weekend and it being relatively warm, we really did see an increase in kind of activity down here, both at the harbor and at Stearns Wharf. So for all those listening and Harbor Commission, I do encourage you to come down and safely enjoy what the waterfront has to offer. And I know our tenants would appreciate that. Next slide. Oh, so that was all I had for COVID updates. I'll stop there, and just in case there were any questions on COVID or anything going on. No, hearing none, I'll move on. So my last little bit, so as far as future agenda items, there's a few things that we have pending. We still have a pending presentation from the State Lands Commission. We also have our fiscal year 2022 budget recommendation. Tonight, Mr. Bossy will be going over our fiscal year 21, this current year mid-year, sort of a status update on where we are right now. But in a future meeting, we're going to be going over our FY 22 and 23 budget proposal. And I put this on here, so at some point we'll likely have a discussion on slip assignment policy with the full commission. We've been doing a fair amount of work with the subcommittee, and it's tentative as to when that's going to come to an end as of now, but at some point we'll be coming back to the full Harbor Commission with that. So with that, I will pass it off to Mr. Brian Adair. Unless there are any questions for this portion.
I have one question, Mike. In terms of the budget presentation, when will that occur, do you foresee?
Yeah, Commissioner Nelson. So tonight we're going to be doing our FY21 mid-year update. So that'll be kind of a status update for where we are today and where we project ourselves ending this fiscal year. And then I believe at our next Harbor Commission meeting, our March meeting, we're going to be going over our fiscal year 2022 and 2023 budget proposal.
Going over, or will you be going over that proposal, or will you be seeking a vote at that time?
We'll be seeking a vote at that time, and then that budget ultimately goes to council for approval later in June.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Brian Adair, you're up.
Hello, commissioners.
You too, thanks.
Good evening, commissioners. I'd like to give my facilities management report. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk about the underground fuel storage tank project that's starting on March 8th. The Santa Barbara fuel dock is supplied by underground fuel storage tanks located west of 125 Harbor Way building. There are 4 10,000-gallon fuel tanks underground currently, and those 4 will be replaced with 2 20,000-gallon tanks. 1 tank for gasoline, 1 tank for diesel fuel. McCormick's Oil Corporation, who operates the fuel dock, has contracted BT's service station contractors to replace the fuel tanks. Construction mobilization will start on March 8th, and the project will be completed within 90 days. But right now, per the construction schedule, we hope to have it done within by May 19th. The waterfront has informed slip owners, waterfront tenants, commercial fishery, and we're planning to post other public notices to give the general public information of the upcoming project. Delivery vehicles be redirected to unloading zones that won't conflict with traffic or the construction. Unfortunately, we have to take up 38 of the 90-minute parking spaces around and near the construction to offset Harbor Way around the construction zone and to create a construction laydown area. Next slide, please. This is a diagram that shows where the construction site is. It's the place with a large X west of building 125. The laydown areas are the densely hatched marked areas, and other 90-minute parking spaces that have little X's in them will be taken out of service for the project. Any questions on this project? I forgot to mention, I'd like to mention that the fuel dock will stay open. We're going to have 1 diesel fuel tanker truck on the city pier, and gasoline will be delivered on a scheduled basis by appointment only. Next slide, please.
I have a question on that, Brian, if I could.
Yeah, previous slide, please.
So will there be signage out towards the entrance to Harbor Way, letting people know that there's limited parking so that people don't drive in there and have to turn around like when it's full?
Yeah, if you remember, this project was started a year ago, and we found some electrical utility line under the asphalt adjacent to the fuel tank, so we stopped. So we're going to follow the model that we learned last time, but yes, there will be traffic control at the entrance of Harbor Way. Actually, after the vote, the Harbor Marine Works entrance gate, we're going to control traffic there and with signs to divert pedestrian traffic, to try to keep pedestrian traffic out of that area. We're planning to post a sign before construction starts to let people know that there is going to be an upcoming project that will disrupt that area. And we'll have ample signs to help direct traffic and pedestrians and do what we can to keep the facility operations going and minimize its impact.
And then there will be access to the yacht club parking lot?
Yes, I've had a discussion with the yacht club, and those members can access the yacht club parking lot. They have been generous to allow us to use some of their parking lot on the far west side Monday through Thursday. If we need a little extra elbow room, we can stage some heavy equipment or big trucks in that area to help keep Harbor Way open. But they've been very generous to work with us, and we'll try to, we don't anticipate to block any of their members from getting to their parking lot.
Good, okay, thank you.
You're
I've got a
welcome.
question, Brian. How about the commercial fishing? Commercial trucks are coming and going all the time, and they utilize those 3 fish hoists, as you well know. There didn't seem to be a problem at all when you began the construction previously, but I'm assuming though there'll be disruptions, it won't interfere with the commerce that occurs on the city pier.
Yeah, we don't plan to disrupt that at all. There might be a rare occasion where we bring in a crane or something, and we're setting the crane up, where we have to narrow the Harbor Way down to 1 lane, or actually block it all away for a couple hours. But I'll be working with the contractor and knowing when we're going to have those situations, and then plan around the busy time that the commercial fishermen need to get to the city pier. But we're going to try to mitigate that and work around that as best we can. But I want to be supportive to their needs and keep their trucks moving.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Brian, I have a question as well. As I recall, when we got started with this project, there was a way for foot traffic to move along between the construction site and 117 Harbor Way. Is that anticipated to happen again?
Yeah, we're going to direct, again, we're going to try to direct pedestrian traffic away from the construction zone, try to move them up to, try to move them around the north side of Waterfront Center. You mentioned the building number. I'm looking it up. Which building number did you say?
That was the one right adjacent to construction site.
117.
Yeah, 117.
As you see in the diagram, on the north side of 117 is an alleyway, but there is a stairs that go up in front of the water center. So pedestrians can walk that way, but that's more of a vehicle traffic zone. We're going to try to keep them on the north side of Waterfront Center and have them go around Breakwater Restaurant and come down that way. Once they're on the harbor side, then they can backtrack down the alleyways to go to the different business offices. But I'd like to keep pedestrians away from Harbor Way as much as possible. There might be last time we had the construction, there was a small turnaround where parents could drop off their kids. But that invites pedestrians into the construction zone. So we're going to try to keep them further towards the entrance of Harbor Way, where the valet parking is, and try to direct them that way rather than going into the construction zone for safety reasons.
So does that anticipate that the fish market won't be accessible?
We plan on keeping the fish market accessible, but it's going to be very tight. I'm champion for them. I know that outside the fish market, at times, they have people lined up for COVID. They can only have three guest customers inside at a time. So we may have to, when they do have those lines, but they expect most of their customers to come on weekends when construction's not in play. But they will have access to the front of their store, and I'll be outside watching where they put down the construction fence and trying to keep that as wide as possible. But most of the foot traffic has to come from the east side down the alleyway to the west side to the fish market.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide, please. As you know, for the sandberms, we construct 2 sandberms every year in anticipation of large waves associated with winter storms. These sandberms are constructed at the mouth of Mission Creek on East Beach and another one on Ledbetter Beach. An environmental survey is conducted before any heavy equipment is brought onto the beaches to protect wildlife. Cushman Contracting Corporation was contracted this year to help us construct, maintain, and remove the sandberms. Mission Creek sandberm will have some preventive rebuilding on February 24th, and then it's scheduled to be deconstructed on March 24th. Next slide, please. Any questions? Just an informational update on sandberms. Next slide, please. Mike, were you going to introduce our speaker?
Yeah, I can do. I don't know if Melissa needs much of an introduction with this group, but Melissa Hetrick's here to speak on the sea level rise adaptation plan update that was accepted by council earlier this month. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Hetrick.
Thanks, Mr. Wiltshire. Good evening, commissioners. I'll make it fast since you have a lot on your agenda. But last time I was before you was in September, I believe. And at that time, we were conducting a 2-month public outreach and comment period on the draft sea level rise adaptation plan. Following that comment period, we reconvened the sea level rise subcommittee, worked through a number of issues that were raised as part of comments, and edited the document. And then on December 9th, the sea level rise subcommittee unanimously approved a recommendation to council on the adaptation plan. And then on February 2nd, we're pleased to announce that City Council approved the sea level rise adaptation plan. And just as a reminder, the adaptation plan recommends a phased approach to adaptation planning, whereupon the city would monitor changing shoreline conditions and then take certain actions when defined thresholds are reached. And the plan includes detailed recommendations for necessary action in the next 10 years, so our near-term action, and then a structure for decision-making that, again, is based upon amounts of sea level rise as opposed to like exact years that they might occur, given how projections for sea level rise are changing a lot over time. Next slide. So just quickly, you'll remember that we started this process with a 2018 vulnerability assessment that really showed what would happen if no action is taken through the year 2100. Around the same time, we certified a 2019 coastal land use plan, and that did set in place interim development review policies to address the issue of sea level rise for the purposes of coastal development permitting. So we already have regulations in place that address sea level rise for the purposes of permitting. And so the adaptation plan really focuses more comprehensively on not just regulations, but also capital improvement projects that the city could take to prepare for sea level rise. Next slide. So just quickly, as we discussed at the last meeting, the harbor and Stearns Wharf and all of the waterfront really is already at risk for flooding and damage during major storms, particularly during El Nino conditions when sea levels are already higher than normal. And so moving forward into the next 10 years, 10 to 20 years, when we're expected to see about a foot of sea level rise occur, it's just more likely that the breakwater will be overtopped more often during smaller storms, that the pile caps in the marina piles will be dislocated more because of high tide conditions, that it becomes more possible for damage to occur to Stearns Wharf, and then, of course, more potential for flooding and erosion along the waterfront. And then moving into 2.5 feet of sea level rise, which is projected to occur somewhere between 2060 and 2090, we start seeing regular flooding of the harbor parking lots and significant erosion along the waterfront, and much more frequent flooding extending up to Cabrillo Boulevard. And then in the long term, we've discussed that without any action at 6.6 feet of sea level rise, so that would be anywhere between 2100 and 2150, we would see regular high tides affecting most of the waterfront area. Next slide. So one of the things that the Sea Level Rise Subcommittee, our consultants, and our interdepartmental staff team did with edits to the document this last time around is we took the long list of near-term actions that were recommended and further prioritized them, and in particular assigned 8 of them this assignment of highest priority to initiate in the next few years. And many of the near-term actions are projects that the city has already been considering because they address risks that we already have now. It's just that in many cases, we'd be moving up the date that we might have previously thought we would need to do something by, or it's higher priority now because of sea level rise, or it has to be changed in scope because of sea level rise. So the highest priority adaptation actions that were designated in the plan were the following. So development and implementation of a shoreline monitoring program in collaboration with our regional partners. And we're already starting to talk to Beacon about potentially partnering with them on that program. Study and implementing options to optimize and expand existing sand bypassing, beach nourishment, and use of sand berms along our city beaches. So really taking a look at what are our current practices for sediment management, how much extra sand do we have, and how could we change our sand management approach to improve our risk of erosion and flooding. And then the report also states that we need to initiate studies and start looking for funding to raise or otherwise modify the harbor breakwater, the rock groin, and the sand spit, and the walkway and walls spanning from the breakwater to the harbor commercial area. That we, as we are renovating the marina facilities, that we raise the piles, and that by about 1 foot of sea level rise, we have raised all the marina piles and the city pier. And that, pardon me, that we begin to study appropriate triggers for temporarily closing Stearns Wharf during hazardous storm events and any other potential safety measures that may be needed in the near and midterm. Sorry, I have allergies. It's kind of tripping me up right now. Next slide. And then the other measures include updating the city's hazard mitigation plan so that adaptation projects are eligible for federal hazard mitigation funding, that we start to study and implement a redesign of the Laguna tide gate and pump system. And that project has actually been on the books for a while, but is much higher in priority now. And then we begin to study and implement options for the relocation of our major sewer lines and other utility lines that are located under the beach in the waterfront area. Next slide. So in addition to these, there are a number of near-term studies that need to be done in order to make these long-term decisions. And most of these decisions would need to occur around 1 to 1.5 feet of sea level rise in order to be prepared for around 2.5 to 3 feet of sea level rise. So those type of decisions include whether to raise the grades around the harbor area, commercial area, or begin to relocate certain harbor facilities, whether to reconstruct, redesign, or remove Stearns Wharf, whether to allow rock revetments to protect Shoreline Drive in place, whether to consider large-scale flood protection measures along the waterfront, including levees and creek flood walls and groundwater dewatering wells, and then beginning to consider options for adapting our wastewater system and El Estero Water Resources Center. Next slide. So just in conclusion, moving into implementation, it's anticipated that each department of the city will undertake the adaptation projects specific to their area of expertise, but that there is a need for a central coordinator or coordination of that overall sea level rise adaptation program. And that would be to lead things like studies, develop the shoreline monitoring program and the 5-year implementation plan to further prioritize and track progress on projects, to look at funding and consult with federal, state, and regional entities, share relevant information across departments, assist with permitting, and conduct public education and outreach. And right now, it's proposed that coordination would occur out of the Sustainability and Resilience Department. However, City Council will need to consider as part of upcoming budget deliberations how to assign resources to fulfill that need out of the Sustainability Department. And then Council will be reviewing the capital improvement program in March, and we did include, the interdepartmental team did include the highest priority near-term measures, including the measures associated with the waterfront that I did just list into the next capital improvement program, so that we're beginning to look at those measures and the studies needed as part of our overall capital planning. Next slide. So with that, I'm done. Are there any questions?
Sure. You mentioned that there was going to be an interdepartmental team that's going to look at capital requests. I know that we're going to be considering our capital program next month, and we'll be recommending, I believe, a couple of projects that are there to address sea level rise. What happens to those? Are you aware of them before they go into the project and we approve them or consider approving them? Or are you already aware of them and just waiting to see them and are delighted that the waterfront department has decided to pay for them?
Commissioner Nelson. So the interdepartmental staff team has been a team that's been working for several years, and as part of development of this year's capital improvement program, we sat down and took a look at the near-term action items and decided which ones to put in the capital improvement program and which department to initially assign them under, and then each department head took a stab at looking at and working with the interdepartmental staff team about how much money we would need in the upcoming 5 years to do those projects. And in some cases, in many cases, they are unfunded at this point. So a lot of the projects have to begin with studies. So I believe in the waterfront department, and maybe Mr. Wiltshire wants to jump in here, he assigned a certain amount of money every year to start doing the studies that are necessary for some of these projects, but also to start building up a reserve account to use when the bigger project comes through. So Mr. Wiltshire, did you want to comment on that?
Just a little bit, but yeah, Ms. Cedric's right in line. And so, Commissioner Nelson, we are putting $100,000 in our FY22 capital program. That's waterfront dollars. I'd just like to say as well, this is all very new. You know, this adaptation plan was just adopted. I'm thinking of us as fairly ahead of the curve. As Ms. Hetrick mentioned, really studying and planning is the first effort. And so that $100,000 is somewhat arbitrary as far as amounts go, but it's kind of a nod and showing that we're willing to put city dollars towards these efforts of sea level rise and starting the process of study.
Great.
All clear. No more questions? All right, Ms. Hetrick, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Mr. Engelbrettson's up next.
Good evening, Chair Sly and Harbor Commissioners. Hope you all are doing well this evening. A really quick, brief report on my end. As I reported last year, as a quick reminder on January's, that the recreational boating card for boaters who are 40 years of age and younger are required to carry the boater education card while operating a vessel. The main reason for the recreational boating educational card is to promote boating safety. And in order to obtain the card, you must pass an online course that covers many topics, such as personal safety, fire extinguishers, signaling devices, personal flotation devices. The course goes over boating law, rules of the road, vessel operations for power boats, sailboats, human-powered, personal watercraft, accident prevention, and boating and alcohol. That's a big one in this course. And at the very end, one of my favorite parts was the knot tying, of course. After completing the course, you pass with an 80% or above, and you can apply for the boating card, which fulfills the boating education requirement. And your boating card is good for life. As we move forward with this, there will be some enforcement for folks to carry the boater education card. And in most jurisdictions, will trigger an educational warning that can and will lead up to citations. So for now, I hope everybody gets a chance to take the course. It's fun. I've taken it. And you can find that. It's available on www.californiaboatercard.com. Any questions on the California Boater Card?
Yeah, I have a couple. How does that apply to people who rent watercraft, and at what level watercraft does it no longer apply?
That's a great question, Commissioner McCray. Yeah, so for folks that are renting boats, they are educated by the company that's renting the boat, and they are exempt. So if you don't have the card and you go down to the sailing center and want to rent a boat, they have a program in place, and those folks that want to rent a boat for the day are exempt. Another exemption would be commercial. Anybody with a commercial ticket, those folks are exempt as well. And of course, folks with OUPV license, 6-pack, 100-ton license, those folks are exempt as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have a quick question just regarding this. I'm just wondering about the enforceability of this and how it's going to be checked. Actually, is this going to be like a random check with boaters, or is it going to be like when people are visiting and they apply for a visitor slip, they'll be asked to show the boater education card, or just kind of like the process involved in the enforceability of this?
Another great question. So for our department and our officers, it will be an educational enforcement first. We constantly are out in the field, boat checks. We're checking for safety equipment. Oh, by the way, have you had a chance to, take the boating education course? Do you have the card? No. Well, here it is. Here we have literature available to give to those folks. And then after a couple of contacts and if they haven't complied, then we would probably follow through with the citation process. But for right now, we're just going at it as an educational enforcement.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, on to my next slide. On January 25th, just before our first powerful storm hit Santa Barbara, our patrol officers Ryan Kelly and Eli Brower were on motor patrol out on Stearns Wharf, and they observed a person wading into the ocean east of the pier. They thought it was kind of odd because the temperatures were in the low 40s. So they decided to respond in their vehicle, in the Harbor Patrol vehicle, and to attempt to contact the woman who was laying down in the surf. The woman submerged herself at one point, and at that time, Kelly and Brower entered the water and pulled her out of the beach, out of the water up onto the beach. It was later learned that she was previously reported to the police department as a missing at-risk adult. She was transported to Cottage Hospital for further evaluation and is doing fine. So please join us in commending Officers Kelly and Brower for their quick thinking and rapid response. And last but not least, our storm did arrive on January 27th, and a 1960s era steel-hulled military vessel made its way onto the East Beach during this powerful winter storm. It was a little over 45 feet in length, and it was, again, steel-hulled vessel. We're able to contact the owner of this vessel. He was up in Sacramento. He responded with some friends, and they successfully towed it back off the beach. I had further discussions with him, and he ultimately volunteered to surrender this vessel to the city via the state-funded surrender and abandoned vessel exchange program, or SAVE program. This was a great outcome because it would have been extremely expensive for us to cut this boat up on the beach and take it out by hand. And funds, the state of California SAVE grant funds were used to cover the costs of the disposal of this craft. And that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
How do you dispose of a steel-hulled 45-foot boat?
That's a great question, Chair Sly, Commissioners. That is done by Marborg, and I believe they take it to their facility. They will cut up the steel, and that will be recycled.
Okay, good result. Thank you.
Right.
Well, Commissioner Kramer?
Yeah. Hi, I'd like to make a motion on behalf of us that we thank the officers Kelly and Brower for their quick action in saving this person.
Yeah, I'll second that. That's a great idea.
All those in favor? All of us in favor?
Aye.
I mean, I think it's great that the work that the Harbor Patrol officers do, and they really should be commended for it.
Well, thank you. Yes, they do an incredible job, and it shows. They they all love their jobs, and my hat's off to them. They're driving off the pier, and it's towards the end of the day, but they're looking out. We often see people out in the water, but usually not in 41-degree temperatures. So they quickly recognized something was awry and responded. So good on them.
Yes, indeed.
We have a motion and a second. I'm not sure we had a full vote, so let's take a voice vote on this. So all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Betsy. Okay, I think we're into new business. Item 5 is a proposed license agreement with the National Park Service.
Hey, Chair Sly, just to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Forgetfulness on my part. We were going to move the, what was it, number 8 up to the front. Exactly. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'll just take this minute to introduce it a little bit. So as an outcome of our last Harbor Commission meeting, we have asked Public Works to present on the pilot bike share program. And just popping on is Jessica Grant with Public Works Transportation. So she'll be giving the presentation. And we also have Rob Dayton with Public Works, and additionally, Jesse Rosenberg with the company B-Cycle. So she's online as well and available if there's any questions. Just as a matter of process, I'd recommend hearing Ms. Grant's presentation first, then taking any public comment, and then holding your discussion, because there may well be some public comment on this. So if that all sounds reasonable, I'll pass it over to Ms. Grant.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for having me tonight to discuss the bike share program and the 3-year pilot program. Next slide. So what is bike share? Well, it is a point-to-point transportation option that reduces traffic, it reduces parking demand, provides access to key destinations. It's an affordable way to travel, and it's great to use when it's too far to walk, but too close to drive. So for example, if I lived in the east side, I could go to the nearest bike share location and use a bike share bike to go to my place of employment downtown. Next slide. So why bike share? Well, we received council direction to regulate shared mobility within the city and implement a bike share program. This is also implementing the 2011 general plan to have a bike share program in the city. And bike share is also a way to improve coastal access and connection between downtown and the Funk Zone and waterfront and other parts of the city. Next slide. So what were the certain challenges that we were thinking of having bike share in Santa Barbara? One of the biggest things was aesthetics. As you know, aesthetics is very important to the city of Santa Barbara. And there's different types of bike share where you can have either dock stations or dockless. The picture that you see on the screen here is shown as a dockless bike share system. And we really question, is that the right fit for Santa Barbara? There's other shared mobility devices also to think about with respect to scooters as well. You might remember a few years back, there was a rogue launch of scooters that came to the city. And then there was a 2017 South Coast bike share feasibility study, and that estimated just to have a bike share program could be upward costs of $2 million, and really had to think about the program viability. Next slide. So in May of 2019, the City Council did adopt a shared mobility ordinance that it covers scooters and bicycles. At that time, the council direction was to not move forward with scooters in the city, but they did want to try a bike share system. And instead of going with a permanent system right off the bat, we wanted to know, will bike share work? And so what the direction was to have a 3-year pilot program to see if it is a fit with our city. So since May, there was a request for applications, and we interviewed 3 operators, And ultimately, B-Cycle was the one that was chosen for the 3-year pilot program. Although bike share is our first rodeo in the city, is definitely not B-Cycle. They have a lot of different bike share programs throughout the United States. And it's been great to work alongside them so far, just with the program design. And of course, we're going through the permitting stages as well. In January of this year, B-Cycle launched. Next slide. And really, for the B-Cycles program was to have approximately 500 docks with about 250 bikes throughout the city. As you see in this photo, this is a picture of one of the docks. It just looks like a bike rack. It has a really nice low profile and aesthetic design. And this is something that stood out during the review of the potential operators, where they really did have a really good dock and locking mechanism for their bikes. This particular bike fleet is an all-electric bike fleet. They are pedal assist bikes and go up to approximately 17 miles per hour. The brand is Truck Bicycles. And when you use one of these bikes, they're constantly illuminated from the front and rear lights when you are using the bike. Next slide. So as I mentioned, B-Cycle did roll out the program in January, and this is a photo of just how many docks we have. There is approximately 130 right now with about 70 bikes in the system. And you can just unlock one of the bikes just using your smartphone. And the annual membership is very low. It's $150 for unlimited 30-minute rides. And again, it's like that point-to-point service that I was talking about that really it appeals for that like 30-minute type of use. And then the monthly permits are also low at $30 for unlimited 30-minute rides as well. What is more costly is the walk-up rides, and about $7 for the first 30 minutes, and then increasing in cost from there. We wanted to be very sensitive to the bike rental companies and not for this type of point-to-point service to compete with the bike rental businesses. So that's something in our pilot program that we are continuing to monitor. Next slide. So we're here also tonight just to talk about, well, does bike share make sense in the harbor? We think that the potential users will be residents and tourists, students, employees of the various businesses at the harbor, and liveaboards and slip holders. But that's what we want to have for discussion tonight, is to hear your thoughts about bike share in the harbor, and whether that makes sense. And, you know, we can continue to move forward with just having the bike share bikes in the city's right of way, but we want to hear, again, your feedback tonight. And next slide. And we're here just to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you very much for having me tonight.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Say if a business owner along State Street just wanted to put up a bike rack for their own employees' use, you know, commensurate with this, what would they have to do to be able to be allowed to do that?
So if a business downtown, we'd first look at for the land development project to see if there's any feasibility for having it a bike rack location on their property. And then, but this is not for like bike share. Are you just talking about in general for just a bike rack or?
Yeah, employees coming from all over town on their own bikes of various makes and models, riding down to work.
Great.
And-
Okay.
and they're
So,
in a place to park their bike.
great. Thank you. Yes, if we would first work with the business to see if there's any feasibility for having it on site. As you mentioned for State Street, that some of the businesses are built lot line to lot line, and that is something that we have various bike racks already in the State Street area. They're commonly referred as the hitching post that you see downtown. And that's the Malaga green post, single post with a kind of two little circles that you see throughout the entire downtown promenade area.
I have a comment, actually. Weren't we going to do public comment before questions? And maybe there isn't any, so it's a moot point, but.
Yeah, let's see if we have any public comment. Angela, has anybody signed up for that?
Yes,
Or
we
is
do
there-
have one person at the moment. Anna Marie Gott has her hand raised, so I'll call on her and she'll have 2 minutes to speak. Here we go. Anna Marie, you may begin.
Good evening, commissioners. It'd actually be more informative for me if I did public comment after your questions, because there might be some things that I might be able to address. If that's possible, I'd like to do that. Is that possible?
I think
Okay,
that's
I
fine.
guess I need to make, oh, that's
That's-
fine. Okay, so I'd like to make my public comment after your questions. Thank you.
I think that's fine, thank you. And no one else has questions from the public?
Yeah. Oh,
At this time, there are no additional hands raised.
Well, I have a comment and a question as well. I actually had a chance to try one of these B-Cycle bikes this past weekend. And one of the things I noticed was that there was or at least it felt like to me, was there was a substantial difference between I guess the term electric bike that goes up to something like 30 miles per hour and the B-Cycle bike, which is technically a pedal assist type of electric bike. And I just think there's kind of like a miscommunication, I know, between maybe B-Cycle and the Harbor Commission, just because I know that our main concerns were basically speed and safety. And to me, it seemed like the B-Cycle pedal assist bike went no faster than a normal bike. And I was wondering if maybe you can describe to the commission the difference between a electric bike that goes maybe up to 30 miles per hour and the pedal assist bike that B-Cycle offers.
Yes, I'll describe it just as how I've rode the B-Cycle bikes. And again, we tested all different types of bikes during the operator interview process. But for me, as how I could best describe it is, it's just a little boost that you have when you're riding the bike. So if you were riding from, let's say, Stearns Wharf all the way up to the upper part of State Street, there is that little incline that you experience. And so the e-bikes are really fun because I call it they race the hills.
Right.
So, when you're riding your regular bike, you might break into a little bit of, a sweat and really feel that you're going up the incline. But on a pedal assist, you can do that with ease. And it's so you can cover a lot more ground and not feel as winded. I've used that for just going on various site visits myself on the bike through downtown and having meetings. And you can arrive to your meeting and not be all sweaty, but still you have a good workout. You're still out and pedaling the bike. For the really, really fancy some of the e-bikes that can go faster. I have ridden a couple of those that is not a part of, again, the B-Cycles fleet. But they have a little bit more of that boost,
Right.
so to speak.
Great, thanks.
Betsy.
Yeah. Hi. Where are you planning to place them? I know that where our opinions is being asked about that, but where at this point is the Public Works Department planning to put them? Yeah, I saw that I've reviewed the Planning Commission November meeting, and I saw the place that actually Ms. Gott in her letter points out on between, I think it's between Marinas 2 and 3 and in the grass area. And I'm completely opposed to having it in the grass area, but.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Kramer, it's really up to you for feedback that for tonight is if there's specific locations that you would like. We've had initial discussions with the harbor waterfront staff because they just know all the operations so well that goes on in the harbor. So, we had talked initially with them for feedback, but again, it's up to you if you do want them in the waterfront, and we would continue to work with the waterfront staff on ideal locations.
Okay, and any flexibility in donating some of the money to the waterfront department instead of taking the space and giving nothing to the department? Cruise ship passengers pay per $5 or $6 per passenger. Any consideration being given to that kind of structure for bike rentals?
So for the, if I understand your question, there is for B-Cycle built into the program, there is a fee for each of the bikes to be able to operate in the city for the location. So we do receive payment for that, and that basically covers the cost for the for staff involvement for review.
Well, on an ongoing basis, we're granting a for-profit company commercial interest in public property, and they are in competition with, to some degree, with existing businesses renting bikes. So on an ongoing basis, is there a program for how the city might be compensated for not just staff time, but compensated for the use of public lands for commercial endeavor?
Yes, built into the program, and I don't have it right in front of me. I can pull that information, but there is a cost associated for allowing the stations to be located within city right-of-way or city property.
Okay, could you forward that information to Mr. Wilshire for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and comments. So if we do, this is kind of a follow-on to Betsy's concern. If we do put it in that grass area, and after 3 years, we decide that maybe that location doesn't work or the program doesn't work or something, is there some guarantee that those areas will be restored to their original condition? And that last slide that you showed with the question slide, where you have them right there in the middle of State Street with the with some of the pop-up tents behind it for COVID, what happens if State Street opens back up? Those bikes are going to be right in the traffic lanes. And so what are we doing here?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Sloan. So yes, built into the rules to be the bike share operator, if there's a change in location or anything that's removed, the operator has to put back the condition before. So if there were bolts in the street from the wreck and they decided to move the wreck some other location, they're required to patch that. Again, if something was in landscaping, then they would have to return back to the landscaping condition. As far as for State Street right now, as you know, for the pandemic, it's the street closed from Healy to, let's see, Victoria Street. And we are still anticipating that an interim condition to be around for then probably about 3 years. And as you may have known too, that their city council is exploring options for really what's the long-term vision. So we were initially in the emergency set up, and as you see now on State Street, some of the potted plants that have been in the intersections. So that's sort of the phase 2 interim condition. And again, there will be a future long-term condition. We don't know what that looks like. So again, this is it's meant to be a pilot program right now, just to see if bike share is a fit in our city. But we don't know until we try. And so we just launched it in January, and yes, we'll be continuing to monitor, and locations might move. It just really depends on of the users and different demands. And so we expect that to be very fluid and adaptable.
Okay, so did we require the company to put up a bond to restore all this area?
Yes, there is a bond associated with that.
Okay, and then my last question is, so do we have data in other areas that they've set these up on public safety and the impact on public safety when they rolled out a large program like this?
See a little bit more with the public safety, I guess, so there's for the user, it's obviously we recommend that the users have helmets, and B-Cycle has worked with the various bike shops in town to coordinate discounts if somebody does not have a bike helmet. And then for again, for the safety measures, there is, I think we discussed before, that these are not the high-speed electric bikes,
Right.
17
No,
miles per hour.
My question is, the B-Cycle, or the name of the supplier's obviously done this in other cities. And so my question is, do we have data from those other areas, the other cities or towns or wherever they've rolled this program out, this company, public safety issues related to these bikes?
Do you mean in the sense of collision data?
Right. Yeah, public safety. Are they, do we have more accidents? Do we have, are there, pedestrian? The thing about the waterfront is that walkway where you're going to put these things, there are a lot of people that walk down there. There are bicyclists, there's all kinds of joggers and strollers and all kinds of things. And so that's what I'm concerned about.
Yes, and we do have Jesse Rosenberg from B-Cycle that we could have on to discuss from the other experience or programs if she has those statistics. I think in general from the city aspect is we, no matter what mode you're using, we have the Vision Zero strategy to eliminate severe injuries and fatalities in our roadways. So whether you're on a bike share bike or your regular bike or you're walking or driving, we want to make sure everybody gets from point A to point B safely. Right. As you know, there's a current capital project that's in construction right now, right at the wharf. It's one of our Vision Zero projects. And again, it's not completed yet, but it's to help separate the faster moving users of the beachway from the person that just maybe came into town and not realizing that the beachway has faster moving traffic. And unfortunately, it's the cyclists that usually bear the brunt in that type of collision. So that's something, again, that as far as in the waterfront area, we're mindful of and trying to fix that particular issue, because that's the only part of the beachway where the beachway and the sidewalk merge. So we're working on that and hope to have that complete within the next month.
Okay, I'd just like to see any data that's available on that.
Betsy?
Yeah, the county apparently is rolling out its own program. There was something on KEYT a couple of days ago saying, well, they've got 10 different kinds of bikes and they're free apparently to sign up for in this trial run. Do you know what the county requirements are, what the county is planning to do, and if the city is going to be in competition with them or what?
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Kramer, for this question. This is actually a program from Traffic Solutions, which is part of SBCAG. And it's just, if there's a lot of just interest in e-bikes right now. And as you know, that it's a big financial commitment to purchase an e-bike. And so what this particular program is, instead of I don't know, trying to purchase right now at a bike shop or something on the line without trying it. This provides, they have a whole different fleet of different e-bikes that you can try for like a long weekend. And then it's to also say if that fits with what the user wants to do with the electric bike, and then kind of figure out where to order from there based upon their experience trying different models. So it's a different program. It's just, yeah, it's more for to have your own e-bike.
So this is not a county sponsored program then?
Yeah, it's sponsored through the SBCAG, the Traffic Solutions.
Okay.
Program.
All right.
Yeah.
And just to jump in, we've been working with the Traffic Solutions Group, B-Cycle, and we are putting together some educational programs around safety and how to ride an e-bike. And I believe Trek has actually donated an electric bike to their program. So again, we as B-Cycle are just excited to be here and want to work safely with every bike rental company, support the local businesses, and make sure that everyone feels comfortable riding these e-bikes since they are brand new to the market. And addressing safety concerns and data, absolutely. I haven't had experience with other markets. Their collisions haven't been a major issue at all for us, but we will get you that data from the data we do have for that. So.
Okay. One local bike store that I talked with had not heard from anyone of the city with a B-Cycle, and he suspected that these rentals were going to hurt his business. So I'm not sure how much outreach has been done, but that's another question. And I was surprised to see a couple of rental stations near the high school when there's no requirements and no provision, at least, for helmets. And there is a state law, of course, requiring helmets for anyone 17 and under. Is there a way for B-Cycle to supply helmets?
So great question. We absolutely are promoting safety and helmet use. So when every member does sign up, they do get, the first 50 members do get a free B-Cycle helmet that they can come and pick up. And then to support local bike rental companies, we give them a discount of $20 to each shop in use to purchase a helmet. Again, bike shares normally we're not in the business to provide helmets. And that's why we really do lean on those local bike rentals companies to provide those. And if people need to, bring their own, we encourage people to bring their own. That hasn't been a huge issue for us, but if that's something that we need to revisit, we will and take into consideration.
Yeah, when anybody rents a paddleboard, for instance, in the harbor, they're given safety instructions, and of course there have been some pretty serious accidents even so. So I think it's pretty concerning to be just renting a bike, and that's just my thought. But I'm more concerned about where they may be located, and to me, the grass area is not a good place. I would suggest perhaps down by the snack shop and Santa Barbara Sailing Center. There's some a cement space there. Another place would be near the seashells on the going into Sea Landing, and that would be a location for the kiosks. Also, it seemed to me, a 9-foot tall kiosk. The grass area, I walk my dog, and it's a very popular place to for the dog to pee.
Yeah.
But that's perhaps another consideration.
I did meet with Skip over at the Sailing Center, and we did agree to a great location that I would be in favor for all of you guys. And we, again, as Jessica had mentioned, take into consideration your feedback, and of course will not place docks and stations on areas that, you know, you guys are against. So
there have been some locations suggested. What is the process of I guess, Public Works and the harbor staff working through these locations, and where are we with that? And do those locations, do we expect those to come back to the Harbor Commission for further review before final decisions are made?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. The first process is because this the harbor is located in the coastal zone, and that does require a coastal development permit. So that was, again, approved by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's decision was appealed to the City Council. The City Council denied the appeal, upheld the decision for the coastal development permit. We understand from the appellant, Ms. Scott, that she is interested in appealing to the California Coastal Commission. So again, we'll have to hear from the Coastal Commission if, again, the bike share docks can be located in the coastal zone. And if we once we receive that direction, then we can go to part 2. And again, we've been initially meeting with the waterfront staff on particular locations, but that, you know, again, that's something that we can look to the Mr. Wilshire for some direction on if we're just coordinating with the staff or we return to this commission.
Yeah, commissioners, I think a good step, and we're kind of at square one here. So I think a good step would be for waterfront staff to work with Public Works staff. Our staff does know the waterfront and harbor fairly well. We could put together a tentative list of locations and bring those back to you for discussion, and that could kind of continue this process.
Okay, I think that would be appreciated. I think some of the commissioners have certainly have opinions about some places being better than others. So we'd like to have a chance to review that in our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one further question. I think we're kind of assuming here that it's incumbent upon a renter to return the bike to one of the dock locations. Is that the case, or can they just say, for example, if they're 5 and they bring a 6th bike into a popular area, they can just leave it alongside? Or if there's no dock, they can leave the bike there and not be charged further for the time?
Good question. So it's, again, a point-to-point service. So if there was, say, a dock location in the harbor, but the user wanted to go to the mission, and so they can't. So they don't have to return back to the harbor. So again, it's meant for just a point-to-point service, but you could also use it as a round trip as well.
So then, if there is no available dock at the endpoint location, what then?
So and that's as we start this pilot program, we're just 130 dock locations and 70 bikes. We'll start to B-Cycle will start to gain more information from the patrons using the B-Cycle. And so again, trying to situate out, so if one particular dock station is full, then trying to have another dock location not too far from that particular location. But those are the things that, for the operational side, that would need to be worked out. You know, some locations will be more popular than others.
Thank you.
And just to kind of comment on if there aren't any docks that are available, my team is out there daily rebalancing. We have a rebalancing system and a platform internally that lets us know, hey, all these docks are full of bikes. I need to send my team out to dock A to go rebalance. So again, that's the functionality of a bike share, and the beauty of a bike share and our platform is that we can see, we have eyes and ears on the field. So that shouldn't be a problem. And with the mobile map on their iPhone, if they download the B-Cycle app, they can see different docking locations, and most of those docking locations are going to be pretty much in the proximity if that station is unavailable at that time.
Can you track a bike if it's left lying on a corner somewhere?
Yes, we have, GPS units, and we can find that bike and track it down. Or some people we've had a few calls where people have left their bikes and not docked them. And some of the local businesses are like, hey, I think someone accidentally left their bike here. So then we'll reach out to that person and make sure that they're not charged. Again, we're here in the business to support people on bikes and get them out of cars and make this process really easy and seamless. So.
Other questions? Okay, I think Ms. Gott wanted to weigh in at the end of our discussion. You could put her back on.
Okay, Anna Marie Gott, I'm going to unmute you and you may begin speaking now.
Thank you so much, commissioners. The first thing I just want to remind everyone is that the Planning Commission and then the City Council approved something called a programmatic CDP. Now that's not listed anywhere in our municipal code, but the Public Works has basically defined that programmatic CDP as let us have complete and utter authority to put any bike station or bike dock anywhere in the coastal zone or the city at our discretion. That is any number, and it could be on a sidewalk, it could be in the street, anywhere. And it's their sole discretion. The only way that you actually have the ability to make any decisions regarding the location, regarding any review, or to ensure that the Harbor Commission receives fair compensation for the land use, or to even revoke your approval, is through the municipal code. And the Harbor Commission does have that ability through 17.28.040. It says that activities permitted shall be subject to such further regulation in the public interest as determined by the Harbor Commission at a regularly noticed meeting. There was a lot of disinformation provided to you. The city is not being paid for the use of the land or by permit. The city has actually issued a permit for about a request for $5,000 for this program, but we've spent tens of thousands of dollars in staff time already, and we are receiving no money. There was one discussion regarding possibly receiving sales tax, and that is a pittance for what we are actually losing, because we're actually giving away the public right-of-way for no compensation. And I think it's a disservice for, for the commission to have been told that we are actually receiving money for this. I would really urge you to use your power to define.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I think the software requires us to limit comments to 2 minutes, but I think we understand exactly what you're suggesting, and we appreciate your comments. Do we have any other commission comments or questions?
No. Just a review to make sure I understand correctly that you're going to be coming back with proposed places, Public Works people, or Mr. Wiltshire?
Yeah, Commissioner Kramer, Waterfront will work with Public Works. I'm not sure on the exact timeline right now, but over the next weeks, months, whatever it may be, but we won't have anything in stone until we come back to you with some proposed locations to discuss.
Okay.
Okay, and also Public Works has agreed that they will forward to Mr. Wilshire more detailed information about what the monetary transaction might be over the long term, going beyond just reimbursement of staff time. Okay, thank you to B-Cyclone Public Works for all that information. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Yes, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to get back to, this is the beginning of new business agenda item 5. As I forgot about moving that recycle thing to the beginning. A proposed license agreement with the National Park Service.
Good afternoon, or sheesh, good evening, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This first item is a proposed license agreement with the Outdoor Visitor Center. The National Park Service, just a little bit of history, the National Park Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum, and the Waterfront proposed, designed, and constructed the visitor center, the Outdoor Visitor Center in the former radio room located on the 3rd floor of the Waterfront Center building way back in 2000. Thank you. The Visitor Center is open to the public. It's free of charge and provides marine and environmental education opportunities, focusing on the Channel Islands National Park and the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. The Visitor Center provides the public with many educational opportunities. It complements the other uses in the building, which of course include the Maritime Museum. And it also helps bring people down to the harbor commercial area, provides greater exposure for our commercial area. And really, it's a really good example of intergovernmental cooperation in an effort to benefit the public. Next slide, please. What is proposed with this license agreement is a 5-year term similar to last time. Again, it's a cooperative agreement between Channel Islands National Park Service, NOAA, and the Maritime Museum. It is open to the public. It is free to the public. And we are suggesting that we continue along the lines of a lease rate of $0. We feel it's a reasonable approach considering that the visitor center is open to the public, it's free of charge, it's staffed by volunteers, and it does not generate direct revenue to any organization. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this proposed license agreement.
Is it presently open, Brian?
They are operating, the hours are sporadic. Again, it's staffed by volunteers. Many of those volunteers are retired. There are concerns, obviously, with the COVID pandemic. So it hasn't been operating as normal. Usually it operates 10 to 4 daily. So that's where we want to get back to. And if you haven't been up there, it is absolutely stunning. I suggest everybody take that in, go up the elevator and check that out. It's an amazing view. Great place to be.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Bonsi, just to clarify this, your slide says, am I getting feedback here? Sorry. Your slide says 5-year term, but it's in the materials we were handed out, it says 3 years plus 2 one-year options. Is that correct?
No, that's the next lease that we're going to be talking
Oh, I'm
about.
sorry. I'm on the wrong thing. Okay.
Or maybe I put it in there. I don't know.
No, you're right. You're right.
It's a
Thank you.
5-year, yeah.
Yeah.
You're stealing my thunder, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'm having a hard time, I think, keeping track of things tonight, apparently.
I have one comment or question. So is there any other use for this space?
Do they use it for any other thing, or do we have any ideas for the space?
Right. The second part of that, is there a?
No, we haven't. We kind of like the intergovernmental cooperation. I gotta tell you, and when I say that, I don't take that lightly. We started these negotiations 6 months ago. It just takes and there's not a lot to this this license agreement. It's just a matter of getting it through every different organization's process. You've got the National Park Service, you have NOAA, which makes our system look extremely quick and efficient. So it does take a long time, but no, we haven't ever thought of any other uses for it. The Maritime Museum on occasion after hours may use it for an event, as the other parties can also do that as well.
Yeah, it was almost a rhetorical question. I mean, it's a really nice space up there, and it's a great view and everything, but it's, it's not something that someone would go up unless they were actually interested in, seeing out there and visiting the docent up there and things like that. So
exactly. I think it would be a good place for the waterfront business manager office space. That might be one.
Well, we're already getting percentage rent for it, Brian, so you probably have to pay that too.
No, but it's a good use of the space, and the fact that it's free and just provides these amazing views to people. I think it keeps people who do go up there coming back to the area, definitely.
Yeah. So with that, I'd like the motion that we accept the recommendation.
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? This being a license agreement, we should probably do a voice vote. So Ms. Rodriguez, would you do a voice vote for us?
Yes, of course. So this was a motion by Commissioner Sloan and a second by Commissioner Stedman. And Commissioner Nelson, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Stanowick?
Aye.
Commissioner Stedman?
Aye.
Commissioner Kramer?
Yes.
Commissioner McCray?
Aye.
Chair Sly?
Aye.
All right, that is unanimous.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, and now we can move to item 6, a proposed lease with Epic Cruises. And this is that famous 3-year lease agreement with 2 one-year options, right, Mr. Bossy?
There you go. Exactly, Mr. Chair. Okay, this is, you will obviously remember last month we were before you with for the conclusion of a request for proposal process. Again, that process started back in October and was open for about 7 weeks. It was the proposal was emailed out to all of our 61 waterfront tenants, at least the opportunity to propose something for that office space. It was also emailed over 100 individuals who are on our interested parties list. And back at your January 21st meeting, Epic Cruises was selected by the Harbor Commission as the quote unquote winner of that RFP process. Epic Cruises is a family-owned and operated local business that has been part of the waterfront community for nearly 2 decades. They currently operate the Azure Seas, which is a luxury yacht available for hire. They operate the Whisper, which cruises around the harbor. It's a little electric boat. And they also operate the famous Little Toot. And they have, with all of those, they have various license and lease agreements with the waterfront department. Next slide, please. Here is the space, again, 125 Harbor Way, number 14. It was formerly occupied by Brophy Brothers, who scaled down their operation to 2 offices instead of 3. Next slide, please. This is the proposed term, 3-year term, 2 one-year options, which you are all, it's now ingrained in all of your heads. The base rent is $600 per month, right at $3.90 per square foot, and it's approximately 154 square feet of office space. And it was recently repainted. We put new flooring in there and new ceiling tiles and cleaned the space up. So it is ready to go. If the Harbor Commission recommends that the City Council approve it, I will be moving forward to City Council in approximately 3 weeks. And it'd be great if we could get the Hirschmans of Epic Cruises in there April 1 would be amazing, and a very quick turnaround. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have with this particular lease agreement.
I have a question. Is there an expectation of percentage rent?
No, this is a straight $600 a month. They pay percentage rent through their other operations, including the Celebration, or sorry, Azure Seas. And, you know, one thing that I noted last month was that they have really, in spite of this pandemic, they continued to look for opportunities to increase business, and they've done just that. They have subleased with a parasail group, which is in their lease that they can do that. And that's created quite a bit of revenue for them as well as the city. So they're on percentage rent through their other leases.
Great, thank you. I just was envisioning this great complexity potentially.
Okay, appears no other questions. Do we have a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
And Ms. Rodriguez, would you do a voice vote again?
Yes, of course. Commissioner Sloan,
Approve?
Commissioner Stanwyck,
Approve.
Commissioner Stedman,
Approve.
Commissioner Kramer,
Approve.
Commissioner McCray,
Approve.
Commissioner Nelson,
Approve.
Chair Sly.
Approve.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7 is our mid-year budget report.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. Tonight we have a mid-year budget report, and just again, going back to some of the comments made in the director's report. So this is just going to focus on the first 6 months of the year, from July 1st through December 31st of 2020. We will be back next month with our formal budget recommendation for you. And with that, I am just going to jump right in. Next slide. So big picture, where we're at right now. Again, through 12/31, we are down about 6.5% between last year and this year. And that's comes out to the tune of about nearly $525,000. Now the chart before you shows on the left our 4 revenue programs: property management, financial management, parking services, and marina management. The next column is our budget, fiscal year 2021 budget. And the next column, the third column, is our actual through 12/31/2020. And then you'll find in the next column a comparison to where we were at last year in 2019. Again, I want to let you know that last year at this time we were on pace to have a record year. Our revenues were really off the charts. Everything was just working out really well. And then of course in March, everything went astray. The fifth column is the change year to year. So from 12/31/19 to 12/31/20, and then the variance in percentage. So with our property management, it's down 500, as you can see, over $526,000, or nearly 17%. A big part of that, obviously, is our food service leases. Those folks are suffering. It's gone from complete closure to open to. It's been an up and down ride for these folks. So That has resulted in a rent deferral program that the city enacted back in March, and that ended on December 31st of 2020. These folks were allowed to defer their rent for all of those months if they chose to and showed economic hardship, which is very easy to do, obviously. So that $526,000 is actually separate from the deferred rent. So when you're looking at deferred rent for the first 6 months of the year, you can add on to this number at the bottom, the $524,000, you can add on about $950,000. There's a repayment program in place or currently in place. And we'll be working with our tenants on that as time goes on. I should let you know that the City Council will also be talking about some flexibility that may be provided to city departments to further work with their tenants along those lines as far as repayment is concerned. Our financial management is down considerably. That's due to a number of reasons. One, we don't have nearly as much money in reserves as we used to. So less money to invest by our finance department, and also extremely low rates. Rates approaching zero at points. So not making a lot of money there. It's never been a huge source for us, but we'll take it. Our parking services is also suffering due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Not nearly as bad as our restaurant leases and commercial, but they are experiencing a downturn to the tune of about 11%. The one, I guess, shining star, if you will, is our marina management program. It's up nearly 7%. A big part of that is very robust slip transfer fee revenues. We, at the first 6 months, had 61 transfers that totaled nearly, I believe it was $870,000. So our yacht brokerages, a lot of people are suffering. Our yacht brokerages are having an outstanding year. And that's just the way this pandemic is. Some businesses are doing great, golf courses and things like that. Yacht brokers appear to be another one of those. So in the end, through the first 6 months, we're down again, just under 6.5% and about $524,000. Next slide, please. So as far as projections are concerned, you'll see here the chart has the same kind of setup. Program, our budget, where we were at in December, and then our projection for where we're going to end up in June. We anticipate overall big picture that we're going to be down just under $1.1 million based on our budget, our original 2021 budget. So that's down about 7.5%.
Hey, Brian, are these slides advancing? They don't seem to be advancing on my screen.
Yeah, you should have revenue projections up.
Okay.
Well,
Now I have revenue projections. Thank you.
Hey, Brian, hang on just a sec. We're picking up some noise somewhere. I don't know where it is. Can somebody, yell mute? Thanks.
Okay, so again, property management is down over $1 million. We anticipate it'll be down over $1 million. Our financial management down over $100,000. Our parking services, we feel things have started to pick up recently. We had a really good year, a really good weekend, I should say, this past weekend. Weather is very helpful. And obviously as things hopefully start to open up again, we'll see these numbers improve. Our marina management, we anticipate that we'll end the year about 5% above budget. So that's to the tune of a positive $330,000. Again, overall, we anticipate over $1 million downfall based on our budget. And again, just to remind you, I just want to keep this in your minds that that number at the bottom does not include that first 6 months of deferred rent, which totals at this point about $950,000. So that's a significant downfall, as you can imagine. Next slide, please. So as far as expenditures are concerned, back in April and in May of last year, we were cutting costs left and right to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. We continued that trend as we moved into fiscal year 2021, and our budget reflected that. We continue to do that to this day. And overall, through mid-year, we are at about 55% of our budget halfway through the year. Yes, that is a little bit over, but as you can see from this chart, every category is at or below 50% halfway through the year, except basically our principal and interest. And that's because those are our loans and things like that are front loaded. So we pay the overwhelming majority of those costs in August and again in September. There's another payment that comes out in April. So they're front loaded towards the first half of the year. So that's why you'll see that slant in this particular chart. But as a whole, we are very much on target. And as far as that's concerned, next slide, please. I'll look at projections. So expenditure projections. Big picture, we anticipate through our cost savings measures that we will save about $1.75 million in expenditures for this fiscal year. A big part of that comes from salaries and benefits. And I'm not going to steal Mike's thunder. He's got a slide after this where he can get into a little bit of detail, but a significant reduction in salary and benefits by holding positions open. We've also significantly reduced our total supplies and expenses. So we've cut back on everything. We are not sending people to trainings only unless absolutely necessary. And that basically only comes down to Harbor Patrol. They have required trainings, and obviously we want to get them trained. Other things that we've cut down, we are just cutting every way we can, but at the same time, doing our best to keep the services that we provide to the public up and running, and we're doing that. And people are working long and hard, and it's not been easy, but we know we hope this is only temporary, and at some point we'll get back on track. So at the end of the year, we anticipate savings of 10% of our overall budget, again, about $1.75 million. Next slide, please. And I will turn it over to Mr. Wiltshire.
Yeah, okay. Well, a lot of presenting for Brian, so I just wanted to give him a little bit of a break. But I think it's important to go over this. I'd like to just take a minute and discuss some of the belt tightening and efforts for cost savings that we've undertaken over the last year. The measures we've taken, I consider them pretty significant. So I think it's really important to call attention to this. Obviously, the financial impacts of this thing are widespread, and they've certainly hit our budget and our operations pretty hard. We've adjusted fairly quickly and fairly well. So I just wanted a reminder that the Waterfront Department is an enterprise fund. So we don't receive any funding from outside sources, no taxpayer dollars, no general fund dollars, no federal dollars. The revenue we generate within the waterfront is really used to fund our operations and maintenance and capital improvements. And so these revenues coming in, our maintenance includes maintenance of the entire harbor, parking lots, buildings, Stearns Wharf, really all of our infrastructure. And as Mr. Bossy covered, our revenues really come from three sources. So our tenants, our parking, and our marina management. 2 out of those 3 have been hit to varying degrees of severity. And so I wanted to instill that it's really critical that we not only manage our expenditures, but that we manage our revenues and fee increases responsibly as well. So it really is a balance here. So as operational costs rise, inflation, construction, labor, these are all things they really only go one direction. So we need to ensure that we balance revenues for long-term success of the waterfront. So as Brian touched on a little bit with respect to cost cutting, so in light of all of these hardships in 2021, we've cut our expenditures by about $1.5 million on a $16 million budget, which I consider pretty significant. A big part of this was holding positions vacant. So we've held 6 positions of our 48 staff. So a little over 12% of our workforce. My hope, and I think everybody's hope, is that this pandemic really results in kind of a 18 to 24-month kind of one-time financial hit. The hope is that we can get back to some semblance of normalcy and our revenues come back fairly quickly. We're being conservative with those estimates, but there is some hope and some thought that there's some pent-up demand for dining and travel, and that maybe our revenues will paint a rosier picture going forward. So yeah, but at some point we need to kind of get back to these status quo levels and get back to our capital projects and maintenance. These are the kind of things that you can cut and kick the can for a year or so, but these sort of things will catch up. So I'm really hopeful that in the coming years we get back on track with revenues and don't have to be facing these sort of deep expenditure cuts. That's all I really had. I really just wanted to draw attention that it may seem like it's happening behind the scenes, but there's been just an enormous amount of effort combing through our expenditures and kind of belt tightening, because we're not insulated from this. We've kind of shared in the pain, as with our tenants and with a lot of people. So I open the floor to any questions for myself or Brian.
And real quick, if I can chime in before the questions, I want to thank the budget subcommittee. We met last week and we talked about the current situation we have, as well as looking forward to the budget that we will be presenting to you next month. And there were a lot of good comments, and it made us go back again and sharpen our pencils and look at projections and look at how we were seeing things. And I think you'll see some great improvements from what you saw last week. So I really want to thank Commissioners Sloan, Kramer, and Stanwyck for your insights. It was very helpful. So, and you'll see the results of that next month. But thank you.
Hey, Brian, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Because I think I missed the slide, but can you go over those slip transfer fee revenues again?
Sure.
That you mentioned?
So, yeah, so through 12/31/2020, we had 61 transfers for a total of, I want to say right at $870,000, which is significant. That's a big number, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was for what period? For what period of time?
July 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. So 6 months, the first 6 months of the year.
Okay.
And I believe our budget for the entire year is, I want to say $1 million. It might be 1.1. I can't exactly recall. Sorry, a lot of numbers in my head.
Yes.
But we will definitely meet that and exceed that. So it's amazing. It's just that industry is really thriving at this particular time. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
My pleasure. Sorry, so that was it. So if any, we're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, how much longer, Brian, how much longer do you think we can sustain this, the belt tightening? We all know sometimes deferred projects actually cost a lot more in the long run for having been deferred. They don't come free.
No, that's a very good point. And actually, Mr. Wiltshire is kind of our in-house expert on that. He's got quite a bit of experience in public works, so he can probably address the idea of kicking the can down the road and how long that can possibly last.
Yeah, Commissioner McCray, there's kind of two forks to that. So from a financial and budgeting point of view, we'll touch base on this when we present our 22 and 23 budget, but we are anticipating dipping pretty heavily into our reserves. And so the good thing was Waterfront was fairly well reserved going into this. Over the next few years, there's a good potential that may not be the case. We may need to dip in fairly heavily into our Harbor Preservation Fund. To the question on capital maintenance, yeah, so we went through our capital program with a fine tooth comb. And obviously there are some projects that lend themselves to being deferred more than others. Stearns Wharf maintenance, harbor maintenance, marina maintenance, those are not places where we want to cut funds from. Those are kind of a wheel that really needs to keep on turning. And so we did that. We left money in those programs to do that kind of maintenance. The kind of projects that we're looking at deferring are restroom remodels, parking lot paving, maintenance and a remodel of our own internal maintenance shop. So some of this other stuff that it needs to be done, but it doesn't necessarily need to be done this year. You're correct, even with pavement maintenance, if we push that program 3 years, it could potentially be more expensive in 3 years because you have further wear and tear on that on the parking lots. But we're really focusing and tightening the belt on stuff that's really safety and operationally great. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
we're getting a little bit of that background noise, Dan. At least I can hear it. I think I just want to comment, Mike. Thank you for explaining your philosophy, I think, behind the budget and financial management. It makes perfect sense to me and inspires confidence in our department. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I just have a request. Is it possible to get, as instead of waiting until the agendas are set, could we look at the draft budget in advance as opposed to just showing up at the commission meeting and being asked to vote on it? Some of us are a little slower. I would ask you for the handouts that you used at the subcommittee meeting, but if that's going to change as a result of the subcommittee meeting, I'm just curious how quickly we could actually review your budget before we are asked to make a decision on it.
Well, I'll defer to Mr. Wiltshire, but we do get the program out to you and all the staff reports a week in advance, the Thursday before. So our hope is that that week is enough time to review the information and then be able to come to the Harbor Commission with enough information to make an informed decision. So I'm not sure, Mike, do you?
Yeah, we can get you what we have in as advance notice as possible. The thing is, it really is a budget process. And so it's constantly being revised and tweaked. And so we're not sitting on our final budget that's going to council right now. We get input from the subcommittee, we get input from the Harbor Commission. And so things are somewhat fluid, but we'd be happy to get you what we have in advance, knowing that it's kind of a snapshot in time.
No, I just thought the materials that you presented at the subcommittee meeting were really good. And I would benefit from actually reading those, but obviously I don't want them if they're stale.
Yeah, actually, as of now, they're outdated. So that goes to that fluidity point that Mike was just talking about. It's constantly changing. New numbers are coming out. I think we're dialing it in now, so the sway is not so great, but it kind of happens.
I'm not going to dwell on it, but sooner or later in a situation like this, you get to the point where you've got to make hard decisions that you can't just do across the board cuts in every category. You got to say, what aren't we going to do? And I guess, as we sneak up on that, we need to get more familiar with the budget, or at least I need to get more familiar with the budget. So it's more of educational for me than it is, to say this is bad and this is good. For example, I need things like, I don't know what role the harbor master plan plays anymore. Does that drive decisions? I don't know. Is there a strategic plan? Are there missions? How do we go about deciding what a priority is? So for example, I know you're going to have in the capital budget, you're going to have intelligent decisions or setting aside money for sea level rise. I think that's a great idea. But if you tell me that deferred maintenance is going to have to take a hit so you guys can slack budget money in, you know, for the sea level rise, then I'm like, whoa, why are we doing that? As opposed to making Harbor Commission saying, we think that deferred maintenance is more important than having a little set aside money here for sea level rise, because that's going to be a much bigger number. Or for that matter, that I know there's, you've got software built into the capital budget. We may want to decide that the real priorities of the harbor or the waterfront is the deferred maintenance, and that's what should go. And you guys have to live without your software for a year, and we have to tell folks that we can't afford to throw in $100,000 as a placeholder for sea level rise. That's all. It's just budgeting. It's picking priorities. And right now I don't know enough about how you build your budget, what your goals are, to be able to be, I think, a responsible participant. That's all. So it's a request for information only.
All right, no, that's legitimate.
I will work on it, and as soon as you get it to me a week in advance, I will work on it, and we'll be on the phone to you guys. So
that's not a problem. I mean, the beauty of our budget, it's publicly available. So from a line item standpoint, you're welcome to look at any year's history. Our line items don't typically change. So you can get kind of a scope and scale of where we're spending money. This year's budget and the next couple of years are very, very unique. I can maybe instill some confidence that I share your same opinion, especially in lean years. Maintaining what we have is by far the most important thing to do, not building new shiny things when we are in lean times. And so that is a priority for us at the Waterfront Department is deferred maintenance, and that's where you'll see our capital dollars go the next couple of years.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have further comments. So thank you, Mr. Bossy and Mr. Wilshire. And we can move to item 9 on the agenda, which is committee assignments. There was in your package a current committee assignment list, which is up here. So let's move to that.
I have one comment on that. If there's no presentations, I see that I'm probably the guy that is on the most committees of anybody on here. And so I would like to relinquish my position on the RFP selection committee if someone else would like to take that position. Don't everybody volunteer at once, please?
Must be a coveted assignment.
I'll step on there, but I sure would hope that somebody would help me out on the charter and business activity permits.
I'm with you, Merritt. If you join me on the RFP committee, I'll join you on the charter business and activity permits committee.
Okay.
That sounds like a good reassignment.
Okay, Mr. Wilshire, are you with us? Did we lose him?
No, very, very much so. Very much so.
I thought maybe you left.
Yeah, it is getting late, but.
Okay. that sounds like some good movement on this committee. And Mike, you got that discussion?
Yeah, Angela's standing by, so I'm sure she's tracking whatever changes you guys are making.
Okay. And in conjunction with that, do we have any subcommittee reports?
I can give you a bit of a couple of bullet points from our slip assignment subcommittee commissioners and chairman. So we met on February 10th, and Commissioners Sloan and Nelson and I, with many members of the public who are continuing to stay with us as we move through this process that began in July, actually. Our next meeting, I believe, is scheduled on will be scheduled on March 4th. There was some objection to us meeting in the afternoons at 2 p.m., so we're going to shift times on that to later in the evening. So we'll probably even have more people from the public at that meeting. I don't know if you had an opportunity to attend, Lang, but we have, we have some unifying themes that are consistent in these meetings, and they're brought up by the same people. So, but we're making some constructive progress. We, Commissioner Sloan mentioned, maybe some reduced transfer fees for children, or a one-time transfer fee for, to add a child. So we're getting some practical ideas out on the table, but we're taking this, as I mentioned at our last meeting, in a very linear fashion, one step at a time, one after the other. So I think that's about all to report on that. If my colleagues, Commissioner Nelson or Jim Sloan, want to add anything, please do that. And that's why I was interested in that budget figure on the slip transfer fees. That really jumped off of Brian's report for me, because there's a feeling in the community, the slip holder committee or slip committee community, that there's not much of an impact, or or there won't be much of an impact if we reduce or eliminate some slip transfer fees. So, nailing down that gross figure and the direction of that budget line item, I think is key to understanding and getting some success out of our work.
Yeah, John, I think you summarized it well. Thanks.
You're welcome, Jim.
And do you have another subcommittee meeting scheduled at this point?
Yeah, I think we're looking at March 4th, Lang, pending Mr. Wiltshire's final scheduling on that.
Okay.
Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, we've got it teed up for March 4th. We'll send out all the materials shortly for that one.
Okay.
It's March 4th, maybe March 5th, but yeah, one of those dates.
Okay. And I think maybe that's the only subcommittee meeting we've had since our last commission meeting.
And budget.
There was a budget.
And budget, yeah, which we did go over.
We talked about.
Yeah. Okay. Any further staff communications?
Chair Sly, I just want to cycle back to the committee assignments. Did you officially close that out, or do you want to agree to that or take a motion on those changes that you made?
Yeah, let me make a motion that I will step down from the RFP selection, request for proposal selection, and Merritt will take my place, and Commissioner Nelson will join the Charter and BAP committee.
And I'll second.
Further discussion from anyone? Let's just do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. And I think that concludes our business, unless Mr. Wiltshire has something further.
No, it's late enough. Done for me.
Well, then, I guess the next request would be if we had a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion to
moved.
adjourn.
And a
So
second,
moved, or seconded, or whatever. I'm good with it.
and a second. We're going to be
Second.
official here. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. As always, thank you to commissioners and to staff and public who's joined with us tonight after hours. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, Lang. Thanks, guys.